I don't know how much you know about me, but before I started doing this in Japan,
Hmm.
when I first moved over here, I was also doing podcasting and stuff like that.
Okay.
And I started a podcast called Final Games,
Hmm.
which was about taking 8 games to a deserted island
Yeah.
and what 8 games you would take. And yeah, developers were always really cool about being guests and stuff like that,
Yeah.
you know. So
That's
it was good
cool
fun. Good
to.
on you. Hello, I'm Liam Edwards. I'm the creator and director of Curse to Golf.
So you're the creator and game director of Curse to Golf.
I am.
Are you the artist and everything? Is it like mostly you, or is there a small team with you? And
So depending on which version of Curse to Golf you're looking at, the original prototype. So this all started because, much like yourself, when the pandemic hit, found myself with a lot of free time,
yeah.
and I'm incredibly passionate about designing games. I found that playing games was kind of always a path towards my true enjoyment, which was making games, and I just didn't know it. So while I was working at a studio called Q Games, where I was co-directing an Apple Arcade game called Scrappers, when the pandemic hit, I just found myself going back to what I did before I joined studios, which is like making prototypes in GameMaker and Unity. And I'm a terrible programmer and I'm a terrible artist and I'm a terrible musician, but when you put all those things together, you can put some sort of prototype together and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I was just messing around. I was listening to another podcast called the Eggplant Podcast, which used to be a roguelike specific podcast. It was about Spelunky, hence the name Eggplant. And I was just thinking about roguelikes and how I'm not very good at them, but I really like them. But I thought about the structure of how you could make an interesting roguelike based around movement. Crypto the Necrodancer is probably one of the best examples of a game that does movement differently. And I thought, well, how can I make something even more different than that that's still associated with movement? Because everything's about combat in roguelikes. And then I thought about physics, and I was trying to think of a game. I mean, there is the Yoko's Express, the pinball style Metroidvania. Yeah. And I was thinking sort of stuff like that. What about like if you were pinging a ball around in a dungeon? And I started flicking, physics objects around in a roguelike kind of dungeon. And it kind of was like, oh, this is kind of like golf. This is very similar to golf, which is a sport I played when I was younger. And I had some sort of understanding of its general rules and stuff. And golf has this really long history with video games. NES golf is as old as golf as games itself, and Mario Golf, and everybody loves golf, and it's been around for such a long thing. And golf is this weirdly posh sport, but also very physically violent. Like you're smacking a ball at hundreds of miles per hour, very violently, and that's kind of like combat. So all of these things came to a head where I started making this prototype just for fun of this golfing roguelike. And so in GameMaker, I was just messing around. I made a couple of holes. I put the general rules down and the general blueprints for what is Curse to Golf. And then, very much like me, one thing I'm very good at is knowing when to quit and just be done with something so I can move on to the next thing. I don't like getting bogged down. I seem to be the opposite of most game developers who never want to release their games and just keep working. And they everything is their magnum opus, right? Everything has to be perfect. And that's terrible. So if you want to be a game designer, unlearn that. Don't do that. Just learn when you've got something good and just let it go. And there was this. It was around the time when digital showcases were kind of becoming a thing because we couldn't have events. And somebody had reached out and asked if I'd wanted to, because I was posting GIFs on Twitter, if I'd wanted to showcase it just in this digital event thing through Discord and stuff. And I was like, yeah, sure. And that pushed me to like basically put together like a vertical slice, as we say, or like a prototype. And it's just 9 holes, general rules, terrible pixel art by me, one great music track by our musician Mark Sparling, who also did the music for A Short Hike.
Okay.
And just went to the showcase, showed people, the concept was interesting enough, I guess. And then I was like, oh, I guess I could just put it on itch.io, and it can be another thing in the catalog of things I've done. And when I did, then that's when things got a little crazy. It started spreading around on Twitter. It started getting, a couple of thousand plays a day because it was free. People downloading it. People started calling it this weird Dark Souls of golf tagline that even IGN called it when we announced the new version. So that prototype then went into being garnering interest from publishers. And people were then reaching out being like, hey, have you thought about funding to make a quote proper version of this? Because it was rough. It's a month-long piece of just
I feel like
proof of concept.
Like, if you played Celeste, you can go to the Pico 8 type game.
Yeah, that's way more polished, but
but you can go. It still feels good, but it's like you can see the early version of this game.
I didn't think of that.
Really
that's
cool.
kind of weird. I wonder if people are gonna like. Also, I don't know if you played Thomas Was Alone by Mike Bithell. Thomas Was Alone was originally a Flash game that he made, and then he got funding to make the proper version. Man, I wonder if when people play Coaster Golf, they'll go back and play the itch.io version. That's kind of weird. Or maybe I should do what Celeste does and put
it in there.
The OG Coaster Golf in Coaster Golf. That's double meta. That's fun. Oh, I like that idea, actually.
That's pretty cool.
I'm going to note that down. That's a good idea. I wonder if I can do it. But yeah, so long story short, then what happened is publishers reached out, and I was kind of in a transitional period personally of like going from co-directing this Apple Arcade game that I really had a great love for and a lot of fun on.
That's called Scrappers, you said?
It's this 4-player robot beat 'em up similar to Streets of Rage and Castle Crashers and stuff. But the idea is that you are this trash collecting squad and you follow this garbage truck around, and together while fighting enemies, you're collecting as much garbage as you possibly can, and you can like stack them and chain them together, and you can throw them between each other, kind of like basketball. So it was this really exciting hybrid. We like, especially I like, just thinking of wacky combinations of things like a garbage collecting beat 'em up. Why not? What about a golfing roguelike? Why not? I think I'm just stupid, but so I'd come off the back of that and I had a lot of fun, and I was thinking what was next. And then, this opportunity just came along, and my friend Mark Lentz, who is the business and PR manager over here at, Too High Labs, formerly VTA Backroom, he was like, hey, let's do this together. I can help you build a team, and we can work with Thunderful, our publisher, together. So I was like, Mark was like my go-to because we worked together at Q Games, and I was like, yeah, we can do this. And we managed to put it all together. And then since January of 2021, that's this year, I guess. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
God, I don't even know what year it is anymore. 2021, we started working on the now new version of Coaster Golf, which is the actual proper version. So to long answer your entire very quick question, now we have a team of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 8 to 10 people who come and go working on the project. I'm the director and the designer. We have our lead programmer, Sean, who is my other full-time employee. And then we have our full-time pixel artist, John Davies, in the UK, who has a long and storied career of working in pixel art in the games industry. He's amazing. And then we have Kinsey Burke, who's our producer. We have Liz Mobley, who is our narrative designer. And then we have Nathan Scott, who is our UI designer. And we've had additional support from programming friends like Jan, and we had our lovely key art. This wonderful key art here that you see all over the game is by our friend Shino-san, who is a Japanese illustrator over here who'd worked on games like Professor Layton and Inazuma 11, and she used to work for Level 5. And she previously helped work on Scrappers, so I knew her very well. So we have this team of about, and Mark Sparling is making the music. I can't believe I got Mark to make the music off the back of a short hike. And we have the formerly mentioned Mark Lentz doing the sound. Yeah, we've got like 8 to 10 people now working on this thing.
And everyone's kind of scattered now just because of COVID, or a lot of people there with you?
Thankfully, there is myself and Sean, so the designer and the lead programmer are together. Otherwise, yeah, it'd be a nightmare. John, unfortunately, is in the UK and remote, so and time zones, that's not always easy. But you know, we get it done. And John is a professional, so we just wake up in the morning and he's already dumped a load of art, and we're like, God damn, look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that.
I guess I was gonna ask you about Chuhai Labs, but now I know that you joined them, like, because of your friend to make this game. But also, I was gonna ask you about Thunderful and getting them as a publisher, but that's also because they were kind of roped in together.
Yeah. So what did not
roped in, but I guess they've worked together before.
No, actually, I bought Thunderful to Chuhai is essentially what happened. So as I mentioned, like after golf had gone around on Twitter and stuff, I started getting Twitter DMs about, hey, I'm so-and-so from so-and-so, or I'd get an email. And originally Team 17 had reached out, you know, Overcooked and Worms. And that was really exciting because I'm British. So, you know, they're one of the top British publishers. So that was really exciting, and they really liked it, and it went through their green light process, and they were very excited about it, but we couldn't quite work it out. My friends at Raw Fury, Johan was super excited about it, and he then passed it into this European scouting network, I think, like all of the big European publishers. And thankfully, Ed Valiente, kudos to Ed, who was a scout for Thunderful at the time, reached out. And Ed has worked in the industry for a long time, and he used to work for Nintendo of Europe. And he said these magic words to me, which, as a complete fanboy of Nintendo, he said, "This is a Nintendo game," to me. And to hear somebody who had worked at Nintendo for a long time say that made me really feel safe, like knowing that somebody understood what I'm going for. Like, my entire design ethos is about fun. You know, the gameplay and everything comes from my love of that pure driven mechanical video game, Mario, you know, platforming, and Zelda. And so when he said that, I knew I could have a good partnership with this guy. And thankfully, it all worked out. The problem was that I live in Japan, which is a foreign country, and starting a business and taking on a lot of money to make a video game isn't exactly easy. And that was where Mark, thankfully, was like, well, we've always wanted you to work at Chuhai, but now is a great opportunity for us to get you over here and also do this project. And then that's when I put Thunderful and Chuhai together with me in the middle, and then we all worked together nicely to make this great partnership. And now I'm a director over here at Chuhai working on Coast to Golf. Yeah.
No, I saw, I guess, during the Thunderful presentation the other day, I went to their website after to check out, because I guess the SteamWorld games put me onto Thunderful, but then I noticed they've made a bunch of other games that I was into also.
Yeah, they are becoming this weird, massive spiraling web of incredible stuff.
But I saw on their website they have like a box. I was like, pitch us your game, and I was wondering, did you just do that? And they were like, oh, this is awesome.
Thankfully, no.
But they came to me.
They came to me, which is very rare. Most of the games you play go through that process, but it's rare, right? That's why it's so hard to get a publisher, because people pitch projects to publishers all the time, but that's thousands of projects that, like, I think if you're interested in the industry and you follow people like Johan Torresson from Raw Fury, you know, he's always tweeting about the fact that Raw Fury got like 2,000 pitches this year. Like, in that 2,000, there are gonna be 20 to 30 amazing games, right? But just the pure manpower for them to go through,
also might miss a bunch of them.
Exactly, right? And then the ones that get through just got lucky, essentially. Yeah, of course, there's a lot of hard work in making a great game to stand out, but I do feel very lucky that it's a hard one to judge, because I worked hard to make prototype. I have a lot of experience in the games industry. So those things are not necessarily luck, but to have the game come out and be interested, it came at the right time. People are playing a lot of games at home because of the pandemic. People are a lot more open to trying new things. I think it just came at the right time. So it's a bit of luck, and it's a lot of hard work on the back of that to get these things running. And I think the response even to this now, what we know as Curse to Golf now is based off a lot of hard work, but also right time, right place kind of thing. And even its signing was very similar.
And then I guess when you went from the prototype to this, is it starting from scratch and like kind of looking at the prototype, or is it kind of working on the prototype to make it better?
Completely. I get this asked a lot because people look at the version of Curse to Golf now and they're like, wait, you only started making that in January? And the truth is yes, but then they go, oh, well, you must have built it off the back of the old one. No, we didn't. We completely rebuilt it from scratch in Unity, because Unity, the reason I made it in GameMaker is because I'm a terrible programmer. So scripting in GameMaker is a lot easier for me. But as a designer, GameMaker is horrible. But so we had to think about, well, in this new version of Curse to Golf, why would we use GameMaker when we have a lead programmer who can,
use Unity?
He can use Unity. And I, as a designer, prefer to use Unity. I don't need to program anymore. Therefore, we don't need to use GameMaker. So we rebuilt it from scratch. But the way I kind of boiled it down to describing is like the original prototype was like the architectural blueprints.
Yeah, like you have the idea and a lot of it there.
Yeah. So a lot of it was already there from a mechanical standpoint, or of like a proof of concept. And then now we're building the house. But you realize as you're building the house, you're like, oh shit, what if we put a garage over there? What if instead of 2 stories, we built 3 stories? Yeah. And originally there was no story. There was the plot, which is the idea of this cursed golfer who's stuck in golf purgatory. But the characters that we have in the game, the Scotsman and the Explorer and the Greenskeeper and all of these, none of that existed. And that came out of the fact that we wanted to explain some things, and we also wanted these people to guide you. And then they started taking on personalities of their own, and now we're trying to build in this like ongoing little narrative for you to enjoy while you're playing. And then the other thing we could do is, now we have a proper programmer, we could make even more interesting power-ups. Like the original power-ups the power-up cards in the prototype were limited because of my limited programming knowledge. But when you release that, you can then think of interesting things like we have the rocket ball or the portals and stuff like that. So we're building out, these really interesting power-ups, and then we could think of like lots of interesting hazards, and then it just keeps growing and growing and growing, while our scope is trying to still stay within that, the concept of just this golfing. I don't want to say roguelike, but golf-like. It has now become this thing of its own that is a lot bigger than the original prototype.
No, that reminds me of I went to to Miami ad school here, and I studied copywriting. So for me, it was just the writing, but like every time we had the big end of the quarter project, all the designers were working on finishing like either like this layout or a video or something, and someone's computer would always crash and they'd lose like everything because they didn't save it. So they would start over that night and do what they've been doing for like a week or weeks, but kind of remember what they had already done. So it was a lot faster, but then there were changes that came as they're doing it also, or like this would be better, or maybe just easier like this now. And it just changes, but
and
it's like rebuilding everything.
It's interesting because with that, it's very similar. You have hindsight, right? Hindsight is not something you often get in video games, especially video game development. You don't get a chance to reflect on what was successful and what was not successful about something you prior did. And even though the prototype was, it's 10,000 to 20,000 plays, which is not that much, really. It's a small pool compared to what potentially could be, a larger base of users. But there are things that people really like about it that you need to hold on to and you need to flesh out. And then there are the negatives, like it's too hard, or it's not interesting enough after this point. And then there are the things you can build on. And in the early days, I did play a lot of the original prototype, trying to understand what drew people to, other than it just being this weird, quirky golf game. Like what is repetitively fun about it? Why do people just want to jump in and play again? And it was because the golf was easy and approachable, but it was the power-ups that you had to think about. It was never that the golf was hard and you were trying to get better at that, like you would in another golf game, like judging the wind and, oh, I need to hit this distance and that kind of thing, and the spin. Our golf is like super arcadey, super easy to do. And then the hard part comes from figuring out how to optimize, like using these cards to get you from A to B using the golf shots as well. And after a while, I just stopped playing the original prototype because the game we had was way better. And I was comfortable being like, well, this is where we're going. You know, there was a lot of things that just didn't carry over from the prototype that in hindsight, we looked at and we were like, no, we don't need to do that. Like in the original prototype, you could only hit to the right. You could only go from left to right, and you had to bounce the ball against walls to hit it backwards.
To come back.
Yeah, to come back. And you had to like trick shot it, which meant the level design was really stunted. Because every level is basically designed with the idea that you're going to the right a lot and you're bouncing it against walls. And then Mark here was just like, why can't we hit to the left? Just why? Just why can't we hit to the left? And I was like, no, it's integral to the game design. Like the original proto was a success. Like everybody enjoys hitting the trick shot. And then we did it and it was way better.
Yeah.
It was instantaneously way better. And so the level design got better because we can now go from left to right and we can create these interesting dungeons and these interesting mazes. And on top of that, there were things like you only had one club and it was only one power bar. There was no utility to anything. So one of the first things we tried was, what about if we have 3 clubs, a driver, an iron, and a wedge? And then that means with a wedge, we can make higher platforms. So you can like jump on top. And then that once again made the level design more interesting than if you just have this one static club that you hit really long shots with. So it was like looking in hindsight and looking at how we can improve, and also just being like, well, what is fun about this that we need to carry over into the new version of the game, but also making it better. There's an expectation that this new proper version would be better.
I was going to ask, but I guess you kind of explained it before, but if this was, you wanted to make a golf game, or you set out, I think you set out to make a roguelite, but what was like, how can I make this different? And then it became a golf game. But I guess I was also going to ask if you're like, you said you played as a kid, but do you play golf still, or?
No, I don't. Golf is really expensive in Japan.
Yeah,
no, I don't. I don't play it anymore. I haven't played it for some years, but when I was a kid, it was a big part of my life. Like my grandmother introduced me to it, and I played it with her. And I used to go to golf competitions when I was younger. I was pretty good, but I was not good enough. And I used to get really angry at myself if I did bad and stuff like that. So I kind of was never going to go far with it, but it's always something that stuck with me. And I've always kind of enjoyed it and watching it sometimes. But I think it just came together. Like, this is like from last year. I made like a ghost character because originally I was just going to go with this Game Boy aesthetic, and I made like this little Game Boy character looking, and he just was a ghost because he had no feet and it was easier to draw. And then it kind of just looked like he was holding a golf club and stuff. And then I was like, well, you know, these things kind of work. And I was just kind of experimenting around, and it just was like, well, I understand the rules of golf. And what is amazing about sport, even if you don't like sport has lasted the ages because the rules are just so defined. Like you can't break them really, right? You can't go into baseball and be like, all of a sudden we're going to throw like giant balls, right? It's not how baseball works, right? It is the way it is because it endured the time, because everybody understands the rules or whatever. Same with golf, same with soccer, same with anything. And what is so great about sports and video games is that video games can take those rules that people understand inherently and then twist on them. So if let's say this was a game where it was kind of like golf, but you were using an axe to hit like an enemy and bounce the enemy around, people would still be trying to like figure out the rules in their head, because they're like, okay, well, this doesn't resemble anything other than it's kind of like golf, but not really golf. But as soon as you as soon as you dress it up like golf and you're like, this is golf, people are like, okay, I get it, right? I hit the ball
Yeah.
and I need to get to the flag. Everybody understands the generic rules. So once you have done something like that, as the game designer, a lot is off your back because the player's understanding is already there.
Yeah, they understand the basics, and then you get to add the power-ups and things that they
So that's the
learn
thing, right?
instead.
So exactly. So if I say to them, if you understand what a par is or whatever, well, what we do then is manipulate that, or we manipulate the ball, or we manipulate the hole, because you understand what a hole is, you understand what the ball is. So if I change those things, you understand that changes have happened inherently to the game. But if the ball was the enemy and an enemy turned red, you'd be like, why is this enemy turning red? I don't understand it. But if you're asking yourself, why is the ball red? Well, I know that's not normal because the ball is white and it usually stays the same color. So the player is already doing a lot of the legwork that I, as the game designer, would have to tutorialize and stuff like that. So I look at sport, even with this, I was thinking, if I'm bouncing a ball around in a dungeon, it is kind of some sort of sport. You can always, off the back of that rule set, have a lot of the player legwork already done for you. And that's really enticing to me, just because explaining games to new players is so hard. Even if they've played a similar game, like a fighting game, you're like, oh, well, Street Fighter is kind of like Tekken, but they are not. They're completely different. And, Tekken needs to explain that you can move in, 3D rotation, but, a punch looks like a punch. So there's a lot of like good legwork already done by having it be a sport, just because people understand it already.
Yeah. No, there was the game, Pyre, I think was by by Supergiant?
It was, yeah.
That I tried it because my friend said it was really cool, but I think it was because it was a new sport. Like, it was a new sport they built. It was like, trying to learn it was kind of complicated and confusing, and I didn't want to do it. Exactly. But then when I played Rocket League, it's like, oh, it's just soccer with cars, and I totally get into it. It's like, it's simple. It's just that.
It's why like the Mario sports series of like golf and tennis,
it's all sports,
it's all sports, but like ramped up to be actually interesting, right? Like I love soccer. Like soccer is something I love, but golf and tennis, God, there's nothing worse for most people, right? Like literally the pun of the game is curse to golf, because no one wants to play golf, right? So imagine you're stuck doing something so mundane. But I really don't like tennis, but I'll play Mario tennis. Hell yeah. Like, like serving giant rockets back at people and stuff like that. Exactly. And I think that's, and Nintendo looked at that and they're kind of like, well, even the karting, even Mario Kart, it's like people understand these things inherently just because they know what sport is. It's so enduring. And they don't need to explain it. Hit tennis ball.
I guess I had some questions about the game itself, or I was trying to watch videos to see, how do you hit the ball? Is it like a meter that you're tapping at the right time, or?
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I've been playing. Well, I started playing Mario Golf when it came out, and it was the meter thing. But then I started playing on PlayStation. They gave us the PGA Tour game for free with PS Plus, and then I kind of became but you do the stick. But if it's like when you mess up, you feel it. And you're like, no, I
So I really like the PGA game, and I don't really like the new Mario Golf, which is interesting.
I got more obsessed with PGA lately.
Yeah, because it's all skill, right? Yeah, because it's all skill, and what is really good about that game is that it is about the golf, right? And I didn't want, because the golf is hard enough just by warrant of it being somewhat like a roguelike. These dungeon-like holes are meant to be tough for you to overcome. So the golf could never be hard because it's your basic interaction that you need to do 10 to 20 times a hole, multiple runs. It has got to be the most enjoyable and easiest interaction the player has. So I wanted it to be somewhat similar to Mario Golf, but then with the new Mario Golf, they made it all kind of very generic, and there wasn't really any feeling to anything because you just tap it, most power.
Yeah.
But we have this 2D nature where in Costa Golf, you can see what's ahead and you can see what you're aiming over and what you're going to bounce off. And it's almost like trajectory planning a little bit. Like you're like, I don't know if you've ever played stuff like, I'm trying to think of a good.
Well, there was like a pool game. Probably just
Yeah.
a regular PC, but it would show this.
Yeah, you would.
Gonna hit
Yeah,
here and hit here, and then
exactly.
you try to
Ours
match
is
it.
not that forgiving. Like it doesn't
Mhm.
exactly plan it out, but we give you enough that you are doing the mental math about those kind of things.
Yeah.
But in terms of actually hitting the shot, the way it works is you press, let's say you're on a controller, you press A and the power bar will start and it will move up and down, but depending on the club, the speed of that bar will move faster.
Oh.
So if you're using the driver, the most unwieldy but most powerful club, it's going to move faster. So it's a little harder to control. It moves up and down. And then, you do your power. And then immediately, once you set the power, then you have the angle bar appear, right? And it's this trajectory curve that is based on the amount of power you gave the ball. And it will bend and it will move and shape. So you can see the trajectory of the shot. But what happens is it fades out towards the end. So then you were doing the rest of the image yourself, trying to plan it. We didn't want to give you the whole trajectory and you'll know exactly where it lands because there's no fun in that. So that's what's always frustrated me about like games like Mario Golf and stuff like that is like it tells you essentially if you zoom into where their like trajectory thing is, it'll tell you where it's going to land.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, what's the point? I could just teleport there and the shot's already done. So for us, it's like we give you enough for you to then plan the shot out, but it still is enough information and enough. And, you're only pressing the A button, 3 times and it's super easy to engage with and you can judge it. And you're like, okay, I think if I want to get over this lip, I need to give it this much power, but I want to duck underneath this roof. And it's a lot of like almost mental math, but it's really easy to engage with because you're just pressing the A button. There's no like, PGA flicking the stick and keeping it dead straight and stuff like that on purpose. So because, the background of the game is that you're this pro golfer who's died, so you should be good at golf. What frustrates me about some games is like, you are the god of chaos, but you don't know how to wield a sword. It's like, well, that doesn't really make any sense. If I'm the god of chaos or I'm this army general, shouldn't I already know how to do most of these things? So we wanted to make sure that the golf part was the easiest part of the game, but still be interesting. So we have like, on top of that, we have mechanics literally taken from PGA, the old PGA games, which is the spin.
Oh yeah.
So when the ball,
I love the spin from Tiger Woods back in the day.
So I basically love that too. And I just
like tap it.
Completely stole it. So what happens is in Costa Golf, when the ball is in the air, you can mash the A button and it builds up the spin. And then when the ball lands, you can hold the stick in the direction you want to apply the spin. So you can land and literally make the ball go backwards. It looks unrealistic, but super cool. It feels great.
Yeah.
And you can like wiggle it back and forth. So, you could land and spin it backwards, but then when it lands again, you can spin it forwards. And because we have that, once again, that makes the level design more interesting for us because we can make platforms that would be impossible to land on because the trajectory of your bounce would just mean it would just fly off. You can hit the ground and stop the ball dead, and you can land on these smaller platforms. So as you get, as the game gets increasing in difficulty and you go through later areas and, get to a hole like 10 or 11 or 12, the idea then is that the platforms are getting smaller and you have to control the ball more with this spin cannon and all these things on top. So it is that going back to that manipulation of things you already understand. Like you just said, you like the spin from the PGA, which is great because I did too. And I thought it was an amazing mechanic. Therefore, it's going to really help us in our games because you are this pro golfer. What if you could literally like a magician control the ball via spin?
I think even in PGA Tour, I still try to do that, or I try to point. I don't think it does anything, but I try to point where I want it to roll all the time while I'm playing that now. But it doesn't.
That's exactly. So we wanted it to be, it wasn't in the game. And I remember saying to my programmer, I was like, I really want to add spin. Can we just try this? Like, and he was like, yeah, okay. And we tried it and he played it and he was like, oh my God, this changes everything. Because things that you just were impossible. It was almost like, imagine Mario's jump, and Mario's jump is the same every time. And then all of a sudden you unlock something that allows him to double jump. And you're like, oh, now I can do these things. And it was just one of those moments. So and that was it. It goes back to the fact that we just wanted the golf to be the easiest part, right? You have to think, even though the golf is easy, the holes are not easy. And while you can golf around them, there are hazards that you need to get over, and there are always going to be like trick shots you need to do, and then you're going to have to combine it with power-ups to do even more crazy things. But unless you can do the basics, you're never going to be able to enjoy those parts. So that was a big thing that we wanted to make sure happened.
And then I guess about the game, it's coming in 2022 is the plan right now?
Yes, if it had to come in 2023, I'm pretty sure some people would want to kill me. So no, it's definitely coming in 2022. It was going to come a little earlier in 2022, but it's going to be not so early anymore.
And it's coming to Steam, Switch, and other consoles, or just those two?
Planned right now is just Steam and Nintendo Switch.
Hopefully, like when I saw it, I was like, "This is the perfect Switch game." But that's what I think with every indie game.
Yeah, that was the majority of the comments of like on the announcement trailer were like, "Is this coming to Switch?" And it's like, sure as hell is, because it absolutely is a Switch game, and it's my preferred way of playing it as well.
And do you have, I guess, ideas for what you would do for your next game after this, or you're just only focused on this, or do you have like small ideas? I guess
I'm always thinking of ideas, but definitely working on this project has lessened thinking of those, because this project has been such a mental. I've never had to think about something as much all the time as I've had to do with this project, just because there's a lot on me this time compared to other times. Like one thing that I think was smart that we did was the way we did the trailer and the way we did certain things in our branding and stuff. But the problem with that is my face is front and center on those things all the time, which means kind of the Kojima nature of like, well, only Kojima made Metal Gear, which is not true. Thousands of people helped and made that, but he's the guy you associate with because he's front and center. So whilst I'm kind of used to it via podcasting and stuff like that, people talking to me constantly through Twitter and stuff like that, now it's kind of amped up again. Just because now I'm this weird face associated with this weird golf game. And that this time has been a bit different. So there's a lot more front-facing stuff that I need to do, and also completely leading a project that now has this expectation that people have. I mean, we were just in a video associated with Mark Hamill, which is crazy.
Yeah, so cool that he was there. And then I was like, is this going to be, do they have enough games, I guess, to show? But they did.
They did. Yeah. I mean, we didn't really
games.
know.
I was like, oh, that's really cool. And that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. They kept us in the dark about the entire thing. We got to know about Mark Hamill early, but we were like, we didn't know what capacity. I didn't know he'd say the name of the game. I didn't know he would say jokes about it. I didn't know any of that. And to think like this stupid little golf experiment I was making during my free time in my office at home a year later would be like read out by Mark Hamill is dumb. Like life is dumb. Like that's so dumb. So dumb. So dumb. But yeah, that's really cool. So I actually think about I got asked about the sequel to it, which is always frustrating because the game isn't even out. But I feel like the prototype, the OG prototype is out, and this is like, it's nice to be able to talk about it because you spend so long with nobody knowing about it and it being a secret, and then you get to finally announce it, and then all people want to do is talk to you about it. And people are like, what about Coaster Golf 2? And I actually think I have a good idea for a Coaster Golf 2, and I won't, and my head won't let it go. So I'm like, I wonder if I can get away with doing that next time. So that's my current thought process.
That's cool.
I have a couple of other prototypes in the background, but yeah, my current thought process is if I got to make a Coaster Golf 2, I wonder if I can do it like this. And I'm excited to maybe just experiment with that.
Yeah. I just thought of something and now I forgot what it was. What I was gonna say. Oh, the video, the trailer for the game, and just seeing you, I was like, this guy's cool. I want to meet him and talk to him about his game. Like the game looks fun, but also just you. But it's true, being the face of the game.
I know that was such a weird, like, we had this opportunity. This is video game development, honestly, is hell. It's so fun, but it's hell because everything is like a last minute decision. So,
Mhm.
you know, we were going into the summer and we had Bit Summit and PAX. We had Bit Summit and PAX, and we knew we wanted to be there, but the game wasn't announced. So we, even though we were signed up to go to these places, these shows, the game hadn't been announced. So everything was like a last minute decision to try and announce the game. And then we got this opportunity from IGN to be like this IGN exclusive announcement. And Thunderful were like, well, we could do that. We could do these things. And Thunderful were originally meant to make the trailer, but they couldn't because they had a lot of going on their end, as now we know. It was this giant Mark Hamill event. So myself and Mark made that trailer in 2 days. It was like it had to be in by the Friday. We filmed on the Wednesday, and then we edited it, and we were just like, oh my god, let's just run with it. Let's just run with this idea of a non-traditional trailer. I was sat here, wasn't I?
Yeah,
in front of this.
You were there with all your stuff in the
Yeah.
background.
And yeah, it kind of came off as like a Kickstarter video almost, like you're pitching an idea to people. And we didn't really intend it to be like that. We just wanted to be like, hey, look, we're making this cool game, and we're this cool studio that, you know, we want you to be excited about. And what I'm happy about, and I think maybe you can tell after doing this as well, is that generally in that trailer, my enthusiasm that comes through is just my enthusiasm for getting to work on this thing and like getting to do it. Like, I'm not a famous, crazy, cool game dev in any way. I'm just a dude who got to make a dumb golf game, and I'm excited about that. So I'm just going to tell you all how excited I am about getting to do that. And my panic was on the day of it coming out on IGN was either the worst one, which is nobody watches it because indie dev life is hard and you never know, or 100,000 plus people watch it and everybody hates it, and my face and my face gets roasted for like the next 5 years as a meme, and that terrified me. But yeah, thankfully we had, I don't know, it was like 70,000 views in that first week, and the comments was amazing. Like, I couldn't believe it. It was like, man, this guy makes me want to play this game. Wow.
Yeah.
Why can't all game devs be this enthusiastic? Like, man, if Mario Golf had come out like everything was so overwhelmingly positive. And even just the negative comments were kind of positive to me because they were like, stop talking, show me the gameplay. And it's like, that's great, because I want you to see the game too. And even off the back of our Mark Hamill trailer, like, there was a Rock Paper Shotgun article that was like, the best PC trailer of last night was Curse to Golf. And it's like another one where we made this video, and actually we made an entire like skit. That's what, like, in the Mark Hamill video, I don't know if you remember it, but there's a moment where I appear on the camera and I say, have I told you about the ace cards or something? In that, you can look, I'm holding literally a toy shotgun. I don't know if it's around here, but because we had this entire bit intro to match Mark Hamill, where I kill our other Mark and he goes to Curse to Golf, right? But of course, guns, not cool, didn't work out. But that trailer still turned out okay. And yeah, I think there's I don't know, we just do what we do over here at Shuhai, which is we just have fun with it. We don't know what to do. Like, no one's taught us. Nobody's taught us to be game devs, and no one's taught us to be professionals. So we just wing it, and that's all we do. We just make these videos and we wing them, and we have fun. And I think that's the most important part.
Yeah, no, I think it was your love for the game and the enthusiasm that came out that got people excited. But also, it's a cool, like, you can have that with a crappy looking game, and I guess people wouldn't be so like, this guy's cool, but his game looks dumb.
But his game looks shit.
And I guess everyone's still in the pandemic mode, so it's like we're all starved for more game news and game, or the people that are into that are always like, oh, a new game, I can't wait to see this premiere.
Yeah,
that's why like Thunderful and all these publishers and studios can make their own little like showcases now, I think.
yeah, it's exciting. Like even, Cursed being in these showcases and stuff like that is like, that's what we've always wanted to do. We've been in showcases before for other games that we've worked on, but this feels like our moment, like our game. And it gets to be in these cool showcases. And the first big showcase we're in is one where Mark Hamill is the host.
Yeah.
It's so dumb. But yeah, I mean, we're not going to change what we do just because Mark Hamill is going to be in something. I think that's a part of what makes us is like, even though we know Mark Hamill is going to be doing it, we're not going to make something cut and dry that is just the game trailer. And it's like, here's Coast to Golf. We did it. When I went back and I watched it, our trailer was the only one that had voiceover. It was the only one that had narration. It was the only one that had like text on the screen. It was the only one that kind of was like an explainer. Everybody else's was cool, like game trailer.
Yeah, game trailers, and then I think they had their own voiceover, the host kind of explain some of the games,
the show reel kind of thing. Yeah, for us it was like me. I remember there's a streamer called Alana Pierce. I think she works for Sony now. And I was watching back some of the like reaction videos to the Thunderful showcase, and being in Japan for so long now, almost 7 years, my accent, I'm British, but my accent is like all over the place. She was watching it and she's Australian, and she just like pausing it and she's like, where are you from? What are you doing? And it was just cool to see people's reactions to the stuff. And yeah, it's been fun. I mean, it doesn't take away from the hard part, which is got to finish the damn thing and let you all play it. And I'm terrified every single day, whether it's good or not. But we have confidence. We have confidence. Well, my team has confidence.
And you had the prototype that people have already played that and loved it, and now it's just working on making that better, kind of.
Yeah, I don't worry about that part. I worry about people who then get to keep it forever and then expect the way roguelikes work, right? To be able to play and die and make progress and play and die and make progress and then get to the end and have an ending and then have multiple endings. It's that kind of stuff that terrifies me.
Yeah.
We are essentially, we are still just a golf game, right? We're not, we don't have secret pathways and all these kind of things because you can't move, right? You can only move where you hit the ball, and on a golf course, you don't start deviating over into hole 2 to make a shortcut to go into hole 1 and stuff like that. But, we've done our best to try to emulate the idea of progression and the idea of that if you fail, you've still gained something for the next time, and then, we have all of these power-ups and we have unlockable stuff, and, you're progressing this narrative as well. And hopefully I think people who stick around with the game for the long run, I think there are going to be plenty of people who just pick it up and play the golf parts and they're like, this is great, I'm having fun. But there are going to be those people who want to finish it. They want to get the best scores. They want to, they want to be able to like run through 18 holes without dying. They want to be running through 18 holes without using power-ups and like, that kind of stuff. And they're the players that, I want to have the best experience as well. So
I guess that happens with a lot of roguelites and games like that you get a taste for them sometimes. But there was Crypt of the Necrodancer is one that I like stuck with him. I have to beat all these areas, or at least the main ones.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Some of them stick with you and some of them maybe don't.
Some of them don't, right? I think that's the toss of the coin with the roguelikes is you play them, you enjoy the mechanics, but then once you die a couple of times, you think, oh, there's a brick wall here I don't want to overcome. And I don't think Coaster Golf, and I don't plan for Coaster Golf to be harder than games like Spelunky or Noita or something like that. It's not going to be like that. I want players to get to the end. I want them to see that they can do that. Your golf is going to get better. Your ability to combine power-ups with golf shots is going to get better. And I always want to add in like comeback mechanics almost, like I want players to stay into the game as much as possible, like staying in and being able to say they finished 18 holes. We currently plan for you to essentially run through the game maybe 3 times to get like the true ending of the game. So, 3 rounds of 18, which is like a tournament, of golf. But, some players can get to 18 and they can call it a day. They could get to 9, they could get to whatever, and they can call it a day. And that's fine with me, right? That's fine with me. So, as long as the golf is exciting, the power-ups are exciting, people have fun, I did my job.
I guess usually then I ask people about themselves too a bit.
Hmm.
I don't know if you have to leave soon so we can do it.
No,
Sure.
No, sure,
But
sure. Go ahead. I
I
don't want to
guess
make a game.
no, I always start with like if you grew up playing games and like what are some early memories of consoles or games or even a game moment maybe that was like, oh, this is like that stuck with you or
I mean, yeah, I of course I grew up playing games like everybody else. I'm absolutely 100% a Nintendo kid, but my first console was actually a Genesis, a Mega Drive.
Oh.
I got a Mega Drive, and my first game I ever played was RoboCop versus Terminator, which is incredible. But I got an N64. I'm 31, so that was like my era. Yeah, so I got an N64, and it was just like an obsession. Like all I did as a kid was play sports and play video games, and that was it. And but N64 was like what led me into the friends that I made and stuff like that. It was like I made friends with gamers and nerds and people who played Yu-Gi-Oh and people who played Pokemon and if it wasn't for the N64, I wouldn't be here today. That's for sure, right? And now it's crazy to think that I work here at Chuhai Labs, where our CEO is Giles Goddard, who made 1080 snowboarding. He made Super Mario. He made Super Mario 64's Mario face. He made Stunt Race FX and Star Fox, and I've worked with Dylan Cuthbert as well, who made Star Fox. And it's weird to think that what I was inspired by as a kid, I've gone on to then go and be a part of. And I'm 10 minutes away from Nintendo here, and I have friends who work at Nintendo, so it's always exciting. But definitely, the N64 was like a life-defining thing for me. It was what I kind of bridged my identity on, playing Zelda, playing Mario, playing GoldenEye, playing Banjo-Kazooie, and those games. And then, of course, I went to university. And when I went to university was when the Wii came out. And that was like the moment I realized I loved games and I wanted to work in games, because I was playing games every day with my housemates, and I was playing Smash and Mario Kart and Zelda and Halo and whatever. And I just realized I loved this industry so much, but I was so fascinated by how they were made. And this is like 2006, 2008 era. People still didn't really understand how games were made.
Yeah.
Unless you were working in the industry, indie games as we know it now would come maybe 3 or so years later with Castle Crashers and Super Meat Boy and Braid. And I don't think people truly understand how games are made. So I wanted to go to university and learn how. And that was a mistake because I was a terrible programmer. But it never left me. I always wanted to design and make games. And thankfully, I got my opportunity to do so. I worked at Rockstar in QA on GTA 5 and stuff like that. And then I progressed, to being a designer and making my own prototypes and then working here in Japan. So yeah, games is this thing that's always been ever present with me, but like playing games is not necessarily how I think of games now. I'm much more a fan of like our industry and how games are made than playing them. I have a lot of fun playing them, of course, but I have less time to do so. But I'm always engaged in like design philosophies and thinking about design and listening to people talk about design or listening to people make cool shit. So it's kind of progressed from playing games to more being in love with making games.
And you grew up in England?
I did. Well, I was born in Manchester, but I grew up in Wales, actually.
Okay. And then when did you go to Japan? Was it for university or you went later?
No. So I came just over 6 years ago now. I was working at Rockstar Games. So I was working on GTA. And I'd been working on GTA 5, sorry, for 4 years. And I just started working on Red Dead Redemption 2. And as I think anybody who's read about the industry, it's a lot of hours, it's a lot of crunch, it's a lot of hard work. And after 4 years of working on GTA 5, like working 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, I was burnt out and I just kind of wanted to leave. And no slight on Rockstar, but there's no real progression for people in QA and analytics and stuff like that at Rockstar. There's no tail up, or it takes 10 years. And I wanted to cut that out, and I wanted to just try and circumvent and be a designer somewhere else. So I needed a break, and I'd always wanted to go to Japan, but not just for like 2 weeks or something. I wanted to like go and be there for a year or so. So I came over and I taught English actually for a year.
I have a lot of friends that did that, I guess, in college, and Spain
Yeah,
because
it's
we're all Hispanic in Miami, so everyone was
yeah.
teaching in Spanish countries.
It's a very popular thing to do, and it gets you over here. But the thing that I found I didn't expect was I had a lot of time. So of course I was engaged in seeing Japan. But the other thing I realized then was that I have this time now, which is something I never had because I just spent 4 years working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. I had time, and I started doing projects like podcasting, and I started prototyping, and I started, meeting people and going to events and doing these things I could not do before. And I was meeting people who I'd heard about and I'd idolized and stuff. And I was like, oh, these dudes are just normal people. They just took this chance to do these things. And then thankfully that led into getting opportunities over here in Japan. And I knew that I wanted to live in Japan for the long term, but I didn't want to teach English. I wanted to go back into my game career. So thankfully I've done that now. And it's been great fun so far.
Yeah. And then when you studied programming, did you finish getting your degree and everything, or
I did. Yeah, I did, but
did
not.
You end up like self-teaching yourself a lot also, I guess?
Yeah. Strangely enough. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. I went to university to study computer science, realized computer science was really hard. So I switched my degree to business information technology, which was like a lower version of computer science. It was still a computer science major, but it was more focused on web development. And I finished my degree, and I still wanted to work in games. I didn't want to work as a web developer or anything. So I started writing about games, and I started doing essentially what you were doing. And I got an internship at GameSpot back in the day when like Danny O'Dwyer was there, and Lucy James, who's still there and stuff like that. And, became friends with these people and really enjoyed it. And I liked making videos and stuff like that, but it's not what I was hugely like. I wanted to make games. I didn't want to just talk about them. I wanted to make them. So after that, I kind of got the opportunity to go to Rockstar. So I did finish my degree, but after I left Rockstar, I came to Japan. I had all that free time. I started to self-teach again. I learned GameMaker. I learned GML. I learned how to script in Unity. I learned how to use Playmaker in Unity. And I started basically teaching myself to make games. And I made lots of terrible prototypes. I made an endless runner about Japan called Salaryman Zuki-san. That was terrible. And then I made this Castlevania Downwell inspired game. That was terrible. But every time I was learning and getting better, and people could see, I guess, the potential. I'd already had lots of game production experience, and I was a QA for a long time and stuff like that. So people knew I had good game production experience. But from a designer standpoint, I'd only really been doing stuff myself or helping other people make their stuff. But then I got the opportunity to go work at Q Games and stuff like that. And then I was thrown into being a game planner, and then an assistant director, and then a game director. And then I just realized, oh, actually, this is what I'm good at. So yay for self-teaching.
The best way to learn is just by doing stuff. Like even
trial by fire, just throw me in.
Yeah. But with my site, because I'm more of a writer, but I've been making images for like my articles and stuff, and now I've developed like kind of a style it's like a simple way to do it to make things look better, but it's like now it's my style kind of.
And if you don't have, if you don't force yourself to do it, you never know, right? Like I didn't know how to fucking use Photoshop or anything like when I was younger. just self-teaching. I never thought I literally went to school to learn programming, and I was terrible at it. But then when I started to self-teach myself, I had either more interest, or something clicked and I logically understood it more. But it's never too late to do these things. And I think a lot of people ask, how do you get into games and stuff like that? And honestly, it's just do it. Just do it, because there's so many tutorials. And what's the worst you're gonna do? Fail, and then you're just back where you started. Like, at least you tried. So yeah, self-teaching I think is a really important thing.
If you go to school, you learn everything that's happening now, and in a few years it all changes anyway, so you're going to be learning new stuff as you go.
Exactly. You never stop learning. I think once you realize you never stop learning and you're never going to be a master of anything, then it's fine. You just keep trundling along, being happy, right? I'm never going to be an amazing game designer or a perfect game designer, but I can still design games and have fun while doing it. Regardless regardless of what happens with Curse to Golf or anything like that, I'm just going to move on to the next game and design that. And then after that, there'll be the next one, and you know, keep on going and keep learning stuff while we go along and improving every time.
Mm-hmm. And do you have, I guess, do you still play sports for fun, or do you have other interests outside of gaming? And is there anything maybe you started doing when you were in Japan that you couldn't do or you didn't know about before? Maybe like new things?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to explain, but the lifestyle of Japan is so different to the UK. Like the UK is wet and miserable and it gets dark very early. Whereas Japan is the opposite. It's hot and it's always sunny and everybody does everything outside because everybody's apartment is tiny. So a lot of life is now outside and it's meeting people and going on walks and hikes and I go to the gym a lot now and I play soccer. I've always played soccer, but you know, I play it more often. And those are the things I do. There's a lot more social aspect of Japan, and I shouldn't go into the complications of Japanese society and stuff like that, because the UK and America are very social too. But in Japan, it's a different kind of social. It's like a forced social. But it's always fun to me. And you know, meeting people and going to bars and stuff like that is good. And I live in Kyoto, and Kyoto is beautiful. So going anywhere is brilliant. But yeah, to answer your question, yeah, I mean, I think one thing that is strong about me as a game designer is I don't look at other games and think of game design ideas based off those games, really. I just think of stupid things that would be fun as a game. The first prototype I just mentioned, Salaryman Zuki-san, was about a salaryman, which is a Japanese businessman, trying to run to get his train, right? Like it's inspired by those things. I think, you know, I know it's cliche to say, but Miyamoto, the greatest game designer of us all, is literally just inspired by what's in his back garden, right? Or like those kind of things. I think you can turn anything into gamification. I don't think looking at other games is necessarily the way to do it. And I think one thing that people don't understand, and I don't mean this in a rude way, but if you play games, that does not mean you understand how to make games, because you can make games out of anything. But it's about the what is fun about that, right? What is fun about gardening? What is fun about playing golf, like, and then finding those nuggets and then putting it into a video game is like what makes those types of game designers special. So I do try to find what's interesting about those things.
I read Ask Iwata, the book, recently.
Great book. Yeah, great book.
There was a lot of cool stuff that even works in like real life, but like not real life, but like other industries, I guess. But he was even saying, like, when you have someone test the game, watch what they're looking at, watch what they're doing, and then you realize, like, oh, I should have put a sign or something that told him what to do, because now he's lost, but I don't want to tell him. I want him to figure it out, but
figure it out, right? Like, exactly. And these are like the minutiae details about it being a game designer. It's like when I watch people play, I want to see what they're interacting with. Like, what is the thing that they want to keep doing? Like, what is the part of the game they want to keep playing at, and what is confusing them that doesn't confuse me? Why does something make entire sense to me but doesn't make sense to them? And is it just because I've seen it 1,000 times, or is it because it's not explained correctly, and that kind of thing?
Like if you put like a random box in the corner that isn't anything, and everyone that plays it goes and hits it, and you're like, why is everyone hitting this box? It's just like,
maybe I should make.
I didn't even know it was. I didn't even realize it was there. It was just like a little art thing I did.
Yeah, that we had that recently in Coast to Golf. We have, just for tile we didn't want everything to be green, like a golf course in Coast to Golf. So we have a lot of variation of, like, stone platforms, just for variation. And for us, it just looks like the tiles that you land on and stuff, because that's what it is. But, a lot of players hit it and they were like, why does it not bounce harder? It's stone. Right. And you're like, oh yeah, of course. Like, of course it would. Like, of course you would think that, and then you kind of have to be like, well, it's just for art decoration. And they're like, oh, well, it looks like it should be more bounceable. And you're like, fuck, maybe I should make it more bounceable. We didn't, but maybe we should. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. And then when you play games, do you like going back to more retro games, or even newer retro inspired games, or do you like the big AAA games still? And all kinds of stuff.
Definitely gone off more traditional games as the years go by. I find indie games just to explore more interesting ideas. Like the truth is that I don't really have too much time to play games. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to play a giant JRPG like I
Super
could when
long
I was a
game.
kid or something, right? I'm not going to be able to play even like 20 hours of like Uncharted or something like that. And there is so many, I don't mean this in a bad way, but formulaic video game ways to make a game. Like I started playing the Guardians of the Galaxy game and I really like it. And, I joke, people joke about the fact that I look like the Star-Lord in it, but I started playing it. It was engaging from a comedy side, but from a gameplay side, it was just linear, walking through linear pathways, scanning things like I've played 1,000 times. And I don't want to waste my time engaging in the same mechanics I've engaged with for years and years and years now. But then playing games from an indie perspective where even Costa Golf is more normal than some incredible indies that, try lots of different cool things. And I much more spend my time playing indie games these days. But, Halo Infinite came out like 2 days ago. I've done nothing but play Halo Infinite because sometimes a game just grabs you and it gives you the memories of like when you were younger and you're like, oh God, this reminds me of back in the day. And that's what the game does. And I'm having a good time playing that at the moment. So sometimes you get inspired by older mechanics and they've done a good job of refreshing that. I play a lot of Smash Brothers. But yeah, AAA stuff like Assassin's Creed or Uncharted, let's say, or Last of Us. I'm not a big fan of The Last of Us. Sorry, everybody. But those games they have formulas and mechanics that I've seen a lot of, and I'm kind of okay with not engaging with them now. I don't want to spend my time engaging with those. I would much rather play something like Noita or A Short Hike or Inscription. Let's say Inscription is one of the brand new games that everybody's freaking out about, like the indie game by Daniel Mullins, because that's where new ideas are, and that's where maybe a mechanic, if you think of open world formula mechanic, well, it started somewhere and everybody was really excited about it, but at the time it was rare, and now it's this huge thing. So what is the next big formula that's going to be around, and then watch it go through. I think card deck builders is kind of the new thing.
There was, I don't know if it was last year's summer of gaming or something, but there was I was playing SteamWorld Quest at the time, learning about the card game, like the card deck building games, and then I saw like
Slay the Spire, Monster
10
Train
previews for new ones, and I was like, I don't think I want to play all these, but maybe I'll pick one.
The power-ups in golf are just dressed as cards because it's the most appealing thing to people at the moment, but we don't build a deck or anything. You don't, they just look like cards, and we get to call them ace cards, which is like a hole in one. So but yeah, Slay the Spire, Monster Train, all those games, right? And Inscription is a deck building card game, but with a twist. So what they've done is already that formula has kind of worn out its welcome. So they're making it into something new. And that's what indie games, the power of indie games can do. They can explore ideas that other people are afraid to explore. And that's what's so great about them.
Yeah. No, I feel like with a lot of the Ubisoft open world games like Far Cry and Assassin's Creed, I just don't have time for those. Like I enjoy them while I'm playing them, but then it's kind of the same as what came before it.
Exactly.
But even
and for some people that's fine, but yeah.
But the other night, well, no, I guess because I won't release this till later, but I'm playing Death's Door now early on PlayStation 5. And I was like, oh, well, it looks like a Hades type game and those type of games, but I played it for just maybe 2 hours last night to start, and I already felt like it feels like it, but also different. Like it does things different, which is cool.
Yeah.
Like it gives me that feeling that I like from Hades, but then it's also a lot different. And then I'm like, oh, I didn't expect this.
Nice.
But it's cool with indie games. They could do stuff like that.
Yeah.
Change, like take the basic formula of something that another game is using, but then like, how do we make it different too?
Yeah. How do we make it more just interesting or our own, right? Like, I don't want to just copy someone else's homework. I want to be like, I want to do something interesting. Like, Costa Golf, it's a roguelike because roguelikes are super popular. It's not really a roguelike, but I didn't want to just make a roguelike. I just wanted to be like, what has nobody else done that could be interesting? Well, nobody uses physics in a roguelike.
Mhm.
Why not? Let's find out why not. And, of course, roguelikes are all about randomness. And randomness is really tough in a roguelike. So what happens when you throw the unknown factor of physics in? Well, it completely fucks all of the rule sets massively. So that's why people don't do it. But I was like, well, I'll give it a try and see what happens.
There's a lot of, I've noticed over the last few years, a lot of the games I love are roguelites and roguelikes.
Yeah.
And then I was kind of thinking like, what does that mean? Because they're all follow a little bit of the same thing, but they're all so different too.
Yeah.
And then I think on Kind of Funny, Blessing from Kind of Funny is one of the hosts. He does his little video essays, and he did one all about roguelites and roguelikes and what makes them different or what makes it a roguelike. And I watched that and I was like, now I kind of understand, but it's still like they could be so different, which is cool. Like
that's good.
Even playing Deathloop now is kind of like that because you're going through the loop.
Good. Yeah. I like Loop Hero was like, one of the games
try
this
that
year.
next. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard of that.
Loop Hero is the one where this year I played it and I was like, yeah, you smart bastard. you clever. It's a deck builder, but not a deck builder. It's a roguelike, but not a roguelike. It's good. It's very good.
A code to try that out too.
Nice. I highly recommend it. It's very, very good. I really enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. And then my last question would be, what are you currently playing? You said you've been playing like Smash Brothers and certain games, but I guess if there's anything else.
I mean, right now, all I'm playing is Halo. Like if I get a moment, I play Halo here in the office with everybody, and we've had a great time. It does feel like the old Xbox 360 Live days.
Oh yeah.
It like, because we're playing together and we're playing as a squad and stuff. Like I haven't had that kind of experience for a very long time. Recently, I haven't really played anything, honestly. I tried to dabble in the Guardians of the Galaxy game, and I also tried to play Tales of Arise, these bigger games. But currently also I'm doing the IGF, which is the Indie Games Festival judging. So I'm playing a lot of small indie games and stuff for that. But I can't really talk about what I've played in that because I don't think it's revealed yet who's in it or whatnot. But yeah, a lot of interesting, cool things there. The next thing I'm looking forward to, don't know actually. No, not a clue. I'm just gonna play more Halo. That's what I'm gonna do.
I haven't been able to play it just because my PC is so old and I don't have an Xbox.
Oh no!
Like I have the PS5 and
that's fine.
My PC is slowly, I guess, gonna stop playing the newer games.
Yeah,
it's a hand-me-down from my friend.
Yeah, that's what happened to me last night. I installed Halo back on my home PC, and it wasn't very good. So I'm just gonna have to play it here in the office. I think just get that fix. But yeah, playing it at lunchtimes and stuff at the moment is a joy. I look forward to it.
No, I was in college when it was my freshman year when Halo 2 came out, and we all went, like a few of us went down to GameStop or EB Games and picked it up, and then like we played until late at night, and everyone was in everyone's room that had it, and then that was like the thing, and we all knew each other by our gamer tag. But it wasn't even online. It was all just within the building that we lived in. Amazing. So we all knew each other by our names in Halo and stuff.
Yeah, that's when I was in university. It was like Halo Reach and Call of Duty Black Ops and like that prime Xbox 360 live stuff. It was just so much fun, and playing multiplayer games all the time, which is games that I usually do not play or engage in. I play a lot of single player stuff, but
I think I do more, or if I do online, I never really do it with friends because it's just so hard to like get everyone together.
Yeah, exactly. Especially like me being in Japan, like I'm on time zones different. But now, here in the office, we're gamers. So
that's really cool.
Yeah, we sometimes get time together to play, and because it's so rare, it does feel like a moment. And it's like, oh, remember that week where we played Halo Infinite? Oh, that was so sick. Like it's one of those moments. Yeah. So I don't know. Right now, Halo Infinite, it's good fun. It's good fun.
Hopefully I'll get to play it soon. Or find a way.
I hope so. I hope
Mhm.
so.
Well, thanks so much for doing this, and it was really nice to meet you.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking me. I appreciate you waiting. Apologies about last week.
No, that's
Mark
okay.
Hamill was calling.
It worked out because my girlfriend was out of town, so I was able to record this at home with like my PC and everything instead of on my
Oh, great.
MacBook and trying to figure everything out.
That's great. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm like jury rigged with my laptop and stuff. Everybody works upstairs, so I'm down here in our bar area. Just yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to talk. Thank you.
But thanks so much.
No, thank you. Thank you
and
for
have
reaching
an
out.
awesome day.
Yeah, it's just started. I'm gonna get changed out of my gym clothes now.
No.
Gonna-
I look
gonna
forward
go
to
get
playing
changed.
the game when it comes out.
Yes, thank you, thank you. I really hope you enjoy it.
Now I'm probably gonna go check out, is the prototype still there on itch.io?
Yes, it should be on itch.io. It is not indicative now
Yeah.
of this game. So if you play it and hate it, don't panic
but it'll
too
be
much.
cool to play it before I play the real game one day.
Oh yeah, heck yeah. You can experience the jank and then you can experience the polish. Thanks so much, dude.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks. Nice to meet you, man.
Bye.
Yeah. Have a good day. Catch you
too.
later. Bye.
Bye.
Two High Labs are really excited for you to play the game, and we hope that you get to play it soon. Thank you. Ah!